Rolex
Uh,
themselves make over close to a million units a year,
Correct.
right? So supply wise, there are a plenty in the market, but they are
Mm.
still able
mm,
to create what Daytona. What is two times, three times the retail price now, which
They
is
don't know now it's three times. It's three times.
yeah, it's insane. Like you can walk in
Crazy.
and you buy it for what 50K, right? At Daytona at
Yeah,
retail.
you can still get it about 48, 49. But if in the gray market, you're paying about 170 for a Panda.
That's the white color dial.
The color one, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so which is absolutely insane if you think about it. And Rolex makes like close to a million units a year, and it shows how important the brand is. I just want to ask you about this, your thoughts about this brand here, because we're
Mm,
talking about ultra high end luxury watches. One of the
mm.
ultra high end luxury watches that I like, but never had the chance to buy, is this brand called H Moser. Right,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
an
yeah.
up and coming brand. Some people consider them to be independent. Some people consider them not. So we're not going to look into that. But one of the things is that if you look at their gray market price, they don't really move up that much.
Mm.
Okay, why is that? And they make really really amazing work too, and their watches are beautiful as well.
Yeah, okay. You see that when you talk about the H Moser just now, right? I think that in this part of the world, people who are collectors, then they know what brand you are actually talking about it. But when you talk about Richard Mille, even to people who are not a collector, they will roughly know how expensive is the watch. So the Richard Mille itself, in terms of when they're in ultra luxury, they did a good job in actually positioning it, the branding and the value to the market. And look at the ambassador actually that Richard Mille is associating their brands to, like Dato and also there are so many other so-called sportsmen, the tennis players. Those are very, very good ambassadors. I think three of us here, you will definitely remember those days when Tag Heuer uses Tiger Woods as their ambassador and uses Brad Pitt as their ambassadors. Those ambassadors will keep under our mind until today, right? So Frank Muller, they are actually doing on that part, but at a higher level. So the brand itself has actually, I think, I talked to my dad about Richard Mille. Then my dad will tell me the answer is that, oh, that politician have a lot of Richard Mille, right? So in his mind, it's like, yeah, that is that is a watch that only politicians that has a lot of money, don't know where the money comes from, can only afford. So even he will know about that. But if I talk to my dad about the brands that just how you mentioned, or even Erwick, or even Jacob and Co. My dad might thought that is it a biscuit brand, Jacob, something like that. So the branding itself is very important, and I know that John is an expert in brand. So John, maybe you want to share with us some of your ideas about this.
so rather than sharing my ideas, I'm actually very curious because I still remember that time when I bought the Panerai.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I bought the Panerai was because if you watch the movie Expendable, the movie where there's all these superstars, um, most of them were wearing Panerai. So
Yeah.
I thought that Panerai was cool.
Yeah.
And at the point of time, if you go to all these watch boutiques, you will see Panerai as one of the top selection as well. But today, when I go to these watch boutiques, I observe that the brand Panerai is no longer there among the
Mm.
top. Yeah, so I'm actually very curious why is this happening?
Okay, in terms of just as mentioned about watch, I think the brand itself and the heritage itself, the quality itself is very, very important. Panerai actually has a history with Rolex before. I'm not too sure, Desmond, do you know that actually Panerai has a history with
Yep,
Rolex?
they used to
Yeah,
outsource their movement, right?
yeah, correct. So you can see that actually, if you look at the first Rolex watch, was actually worn by this swimmer who swim across this ocean. The shape of the first so-called water resist watch, the casing itself actually looks like one of the Panerai series. So and also one of the Panerai watch itself actually uses a Rolex engine. So this is something not to say, this is something not surprise in the watch industry, because you actually see that the first Daytona, Rolex Daytona, is actually using a zenith movement, right? And you know that the earliest so-called Patek Philips, some of them they are using other people's movement as well. So if you ask me, Panerai, they have a very good story, they have a very good heritage, and yes, that time they have actually chosen so-called this right ambassador, like for example the Expendables in Hong Kong. I think if you watch those Hong Kong drama, those fellas who actually pilots, they like to wear Panerais. I don't know why. Those actors. So until now, actually, John, if you want to sell your Panerai, if you sell it in Hong Kong, you will still get a better value compared to you want to sell it in Malaysia. And one of the also got the biggest reason that I personally find that people nowadays they don't really like Panerai is because of the size. Because Panerai, if you ask me comparatively, the smaller size is actually 44 mm. The big ones they can go above until like 48 mm, right? And as I mentioned just now, the trend has actually gone back to the size from 39 to 41 mm for gentlemen. And then Panerai itself is also very thick because it is very well known for its diving purposes. And nowadays people don't really like to wear thick watches. So overall, people don't feel that Panerai is a fine watch. It is a very good watch. There are certain brands, but when you put on hand, you don't find the fineness in this watch. But you can find this fine touch in AP. You can find this fine touch in PP. You can find this fine touch in Rolex. So I think that the ambassador, the size itself, and there's one more very crude reality is actually Panerais are the easiest to find in replicas market. So which means that if you put a Panerai original next to a so-called a replica from far, to be honest, I don't think you will see a difference. But for the rest of the brands itself, it's really, really very hard for you to do a replica that looks exactly like the Panerai. So that also draws a lot of people who eventually says that, look, if today I want to buy something, I want to make sure that the authenticity, and also it's very hard for those factories in China to replicate. So that is also one of the reasons actually it drives Panerai value and the branding itself across in the market.
But I still remember when I go to Thailand, you go on all these streets, Chatuchak and all, there will be people giving you Rolexes that looks exactly like a Rolex. It's just as heavy as a Rolex. So when it comes to replica, I do think that Rolex has more replicas compared to the rest, right?
Okay, you can put any highest grade Rolex replica next to the original one. You ask Desmond. When you hold on hand, you can straight away tell that the colors, the polish, and the fineness itself is very, very different. But you trust me, if you go and get a high grade Panerai and to get a original Panerai you put next to each other, there's not much details in Panerai itself. So if you look at Rolex itself, you have this inner ring engraving, you have this laser engraving, and then you have all these so-called the numbers punch in between the lux itself, and also you will find that the lume itself is also very different. So I've personally seen Panerai replicas before where the lume itself is the same. The strength of the lume itself is even the strength is even the same. So to me, I find that Rolex, yes, there are a lot of replicas in the market, but it's really hard to make until a one-to-one. But because of Panerai, I think that the details of the watch is not so much. I think to look from far itself, I think that it's very hard to see whether which one is original or not original. Even I sit next to you, when next time when I wear a fake Panerai, you might not even see. But for Rolex, I think you will definitely be able to see it. Even you know that that's what you're talking about, the green Submariner, right? The replicas green Submariner will never ever make the same green color as the original Rolex green Hulk.
The downside, right?
With the downs, the color itself is impossible.
Yeah. So let's get to the point where we talk about investment right now. So let's say right now there's a lot of people. We have a lot of Bitcoin millionaires. We have a lot of NFT millionaires, right? The thing is, they know that they're in an industry where it's very volatile. So many of my friends who are becoming very wealthy because of this new form of technology, new form of money-making opportunities, right? They always ask me, Desmond, what watch to buy. I heard Rolex is a great investment. I went to the boutique. They only got ladies president to sell me. So where do you get all these Submariner? Where do you get all these Daytona, this Pepsi? And then when some people, they hear Pepsi, they think about, what do you mean go to Rolex to get a Pepsi? You talk about the kind of drink, right? So there's a lot of terms in our industry as well. Like we have things like Smurf, Hawk, right?
Batman.
Yeah, and we got vampire. I'm buying
Yeah.
a vampire. So, but okay. So let's say people are looking for a watch to invest in below. Do you want to use US dollars or do you prefer to use ringgit Malaysia?
Maybe use ringgit because now is yeah, correct.
Okay, let's
Malaysia, yeah.
do 30,000 and below. That's the
Uh,
hardest one I would say.
I don't think there's any Rolexes below 30,000, but Rolex that has a brand itself which actually cater to the 30,000 and below, which is Tudor. I know, I think that everyone else knows that Tudor is actually so-called the little brother of Rolex. They have recently done quite a lot of their pieces correctly. Like for example, the Black Bay 58, for example, the Panda itself, and they have actually gotten the right ambassador, I have to say, and those ambassadors are targeting those buyers who are at the age that they can afford to buy a watch from 10 to 30,000.
Yeah,
So the ambassador is like who? David Beckham.
Jay
Guys,
Chow.
just admit it. Yeah, Jay Chow. Those are the idols during our era. I mean, when you look at the way they wear the watch, no matter no, I mean, that, to be honest, you will find that that panda itself is superb looking on David Beckham's hand. To be honest, today you put even another brand on David Beckham's hand, the watch itself will look good as well, right? So they have actually selected the right ambassador, and the pricing range that they have set for Tudor is correct. So I've actually told a lot of young executives who says that they wanted to get a good watch. I will tell them that if you want to have a nice, very, very nice sports model watch, don't look at any other brands. Go straight to Tudor, wear it for 30, 40 years. You will come and thank me for sure. You will come and thank me for
I
sure.
just bought a Black Bay 58 just
Okay,
because it's just so affordable, like 14K for automatic movement watch
exactly.
from a big brand with the
Exactly.
warranty. And I look at the dial. Initially, I bought it just because I just buy it and just keep it, just chuck it, maybe wear it sometimes, right? But I look
Yeah.
at the dial, it was just so mesmerizing because they're using pink gold for their
Yeah.
hour marker, not hour marker, sorry,
Correct.
the hands,
The hands.
which is so underrated for 14K. And I learned that one of my friend who bought the watch 2 years ago, and the price has only increased a few hundred ringgit. I think
Correct.
what Tudor is doing is that they're suppressing the price so that they can get more people into the brand as well, which I think is
Correct.
interesting. Like, what's your thought
Correct.
around that price range for Omega? Because Omega Speedmaster falls around that price range too.
Okay, if you ask me that Omega, among all the Swiss watch, usually people will say that Omega is the poor man's Rolex. Yes, you are right. People always compare Speedmaster with Daytona. People will always compare the Seamaster with Submariner, right? But recently, we really find out that if you go to Omega boutiques, chances of you getting the 20-25% discount is no more than the discounts that is given by the Omega boutique shops, boutiques nowadays are getting lesser. And personally, if you ask me if you can get a C Master, which you can still get it now below 20,000, is a steal. But again, you are comparing a 10 plus thousand of maybe about 18,000 plus of C Master with a 14,000 Black Bay. So
Right.
again, it's a tough question whether you like a Black Bay, which has the Rolex DNA, or you want to get an 18,000 Seamaster, which has the James Bond DNA. So if you ask me, both are good watches. But in terms of, I mean, if I have to really choose one, I think everybody knows that I'm a big fan of James Bond. So most likely I will go with Omega. Yeah. But for Tudor, I've gotten I've both the Panda and the reverse Panda, a chronograph Tudor price at slightly below 21,000. That is a steal, Desmond. That is
From a
John. I mean,
Swiss
like, if you
brand.
can get it, just go and just get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
even the GMT, the Pepsi in Tudor, is about 14 plus 15,000. There's no any other brand that can come close to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's none. There's nothing. There's none.
They're gonna conquer that particular category.